So on the latest episode of the PCT podcast, we are delighted to welcome Rob Williams, Head of Coaching at Shrewsbury Town. So without further ado, good morning, Rob. It's great to catch up with you. How are you?
Yeah, morning, mate. Very well. Nice to catch up. I know we've spoken a few times over lockdown. Yeah, all good. Looking forward to having a chat and sharing a few thoughts that may or may not interest people and maybe help along the way.
Fantastic. We mentioned there and we alluded to Head of Coaching at Shrewsbury Town currently. For those that may not know, can you just let us know what other current roles you've got at the minute and how that fits into your life? Yeah,
so in terms of things that are ticking over at the minute, so although some of them aren't happening obviously because of lockdown, so I've been Head of Coaching at Shrewsbury since September 19, so getting on for 9 months maybe, something like that. And alongside that, affiliate tutor at the FA, so delivering level 1, level 2 qualifications, which I've been doing for a number of years, and also part of the coach mentoring team for the FA, so supporting coaches in grassroots clubs. So those are the sort of three, I guess, core bits that I've done or been doing currently. And they all just sort of fit together, and they're all very similar and very interlinked for me. Do you know what I mean? So the nature of head of coaching, it's a coach development, coach education type role, mentoring coaches. So for me, it all fits fairly well together. And it also has the added bonus, I guess, that obviously the scholars do their level 2, typically through the PFA. So all it means really is that I pretty much run our level 2 for our scholars, which means our PFA coach educator doesn't have to come in as often, which I think suits him and it is also good for us. So it all sort of sits together quite nicely for me because they're all very similar roles, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned there the tutoring and mentoring roles have been affected with lockdown. How has your role as head of coaching sort of changed during lockdown?
I don't know if it's changed that much. It's just been different, I think. So, I guess we're quite lucky. So the club have been outstanding in terms of the lockdown period and the support we've had for the academy and for the staff in the academy and the programme we run. So of our 12 full-time staff, only 6 have been furloughed. So there's 6 of us that have worked all the way through. And that work's look different because it's all been done in this kind of format. But we've still been working. So we've still been engaging with players. We've still been engaging with staff. We've still been engaging with parents, just in a different format. Whereas a lot of clubs haven't either had the opportunity to do that or, in most cases, in a lot of clubs, particularly of our size, it's only the head of coach and the academy manager aren't furloughed. So there's only 2 staff. So you're more limited in the coverage you can get across in maybe a week or a month with parents, players and coaches. So I don't think it's changed that much. I just think it's been different. And I also think in terms of the coach development piece, we've actually it's been a real opportunity. So I think it's allowed us to do more than we probably would have done. So we've been lucky, I think. Just the nature of the club being really well run and the people in the club who make those decisions to support the academy moving forward. And I think it stands us in good stead moving forward.
Yeah. And it's something I wanted to touch on later on in the conversation about the great work that you have done during lockdown. Just wanted to go back to the start of your career to date, just for anybody listening who wants to get into, the roles such as head of coaching and how you got there. At what age did you start to have an interest in coaching, Rob?
Oh, mate, listen, I don't want to give the full length version of the story. It's a really long story. There was no interest in coaching ever initially. So at school, coaching and teaching, it wasn't something we were probably encouraged to do as kids at school. I left school in 1988, first year of 89. First year of GCSEs. And I'm sure if I'd said to our careers person who was our maths teacher as well, do you know what I mean? So careers teachers weren't really a thing. I want to go and be a football coach as a real job. It would have been laughed out. I'd have been laughed out the classroom, So And I think, as you would know, coaching wasn't probably really seen as a profession, as a job. So it just wasn't something that I ever really thought about. You know, I was playing. I played at school. I played grassroots football. I played. You know, there was no MJPL, JPL. I ended up then playing sort of a lower level of amateur non-league football. You know, I was never brilliant. I was okay. So it wasn't really on the radar. And you know, there was an opportunity when I was going to leave school. My dad used to work at Rover in Longbridge, a sort of big car manufacturer that doesn't exist anymore. And he could have got me a job at Rover really easily, straight out of school. And I could have earned like really good money for a 16-year-old at the time. And he advised me not to, because he hated work, and that's influenced me now. And I often think back to him telling me that he hated going to work. And I ended up getting a trade, so I qualified as an electrician, did an apprenticeship and all that good stuff. And it was never a thought to coach. I'd never even considered it. And but it was through football that I got into it. So long story short, I was playing. There was a lad I was playing with who was a student at University of Birmingham. I was working at University of Birmingham as an electrician. So we were fairly pally. Through his course, there was an opportunity for him to do what was then the FA Preliminary Award, which was like the level 2 equivalent. And he said, "Oh, I'm doing it. It's a week, this, that, and the other, Monday to Saturday, or whatever it was. I'll come and do it. Like, well, you know, it's a bit of football." And so I took a week off work and did it, and that was it. So it was purely by mistake. There was no intent to go and be a coach. It was, you know, if I'd not known him and had that conversation, it may not have happened. I don't know. So it was more that initial bit was more by luck than judgment. And then I think after that, it then just took a turn and just started to snowball. So it was back in the what might be deemed more old school days of coach education. You know, for me, it's just different school coach education, because I think there was lots of value in it. The days when it was pass or fail, you know, coach a session. If I'm in that moment for that half an hour, you're good enough, you pass. And if in that half an hour you deem not good enough, you fail, no matter what happened before or after. And I was one of the few that passed. So it I think probably changed my kind of thinking around what I wanted to do, why I wanted to do it. Gave me the bug for sure. And within probably 8-9 months, whatever it was, I'd left work, sold car, gone back to college to study, and wanted to be a coach. So it was a real turnaround. And I'd worked I was probably about 20 at the time. So I'd worked for 4 years doing an apprenticeship and worked on, you know, building sites and maintenance and learned loads. Listen, don't get me wrong, there was no, you know, I can still change a plug and put a light up. I can't do anything more probably demanding than that. But learned loads, you know, really grew up being around adults, you know, learning how to speak to people and, you know, behave appropriately around adults. And so I learned loads that potentially is transferable. Yeah. But doing the prelim changed my kind of career path completely, I guess. So, and then since then it was probably a little bit of luck, a little bit of hard work, a bit of both, because I think, you know, working hard, you create your own luck and that sort of stuff. And I've ended up where I have. So it's been a long, kind of protracted career, but definitely more by luck than judgment at the start.
You mentioned there you were playing at, you know, a steady level as such. Was there a frustration at the time of when you were playing not being coached, or were you just happy to turn up and play? And
oh, listen, there was no coaching at all. Not now that I know what I think coaching is. Mm-hmm. If I think back, we just turned up, played some games, and then played on a Saturday, and that was it. So there was no. We had a couple of come back. Listen, I can see them. I can picture them now. The guys that coached, managed the team. Great guys, you know, I mean, real good guys, salt of the earth. You know, did it for all the right reasons. It was a great environment. Yeah. You know what I mean? But we didn't get coached. Not really. We were probably quite fit. We ran around a lot, and we had some at the time, as I remember, some good lads playing with us, and we did okay because we had some good players. There was no, there was no real strategy about what we did. We were 1-4-4-2, and it was just training was a game.
Yeah.
And that was it. But it was good fun. Do you know what I mean? We had a good time, and there was a good social side to it and all that sort of stuff. So, but now, what I would deem now coaching, there was no coaching. But thinking about environment, and we talk a lot about environment, don't we, in terms of what we do now. The environment was tremendous. It was real good fun. We all really enjoyed it. We all bought into them as people because they were good people. So that bit of it is relevant and appropriate, and kind of I can, if you think about where I'm at now, the environment is just as important now than it was. We're probably more aware of the environment now, and they weren't probably deliberately doing anything and thinking about their environment. It just happened because they were nice guys, and we had a nice group of lads that played, and it kind of worked out that way. And even I think back to school and stuff. The school teachers, the teachers that ran. I was lucky. I was at school back in the day when there was Saturday morning sport and all that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? And there was district football and all that, and county football, and it was strong. Academies weren't a thing at the time. So I played a little bit of district and county football, which arguably at the time was as good a football as you could play at a schoolboy age. And things look different, but again, did we get coached? Well, arguably for district and county, we didn't really practice. We just came together as a group of lads from different schools and played. And the teachers at school, did they coach us? In PE lessons, they taught us bits of technique probably. I probably arguably remember more coaching, teaching around like cricket than I do football.
Okay.
And that was probably down to the teacher, who was, who was a real cricket nut himself. Do you know what I mean? He wasn't it was actually the guy who taught the cricket team wasn't actually a PE teacher. I think he taught. I remember rightly, he taught either French or German. He was a languages teacher, and he taught the cricket team. But I remember him talking to us about technique for batting and bowling, and how you should hold the ball and how it swings and stuff. So I probably got more technical coaching in another sport back in the day. So I'm not sure I was coached that much, if I'm honest.
Interesting. I mean, just slightly moving forward, then all the years' experience that you've got now, can you remember your first session, how old you were, and how you felt?
I can't remember my first session. I can remember my first session on the prelim. And I don't know what day, whatever, it was quite early in the week. And we were doing small-sided games. There were 6v6 games at the time, and you always had a start position and all this sort of stuff. And you may or may not know, back in the day, then it was very much, you literally, to pass the course, you'd like to literally copy tutors.
Yeah.
And be able to replicate what they did and give out the detail that they gave and stuff. There was very little room for thought, I guess. And I'd got my start position in the wrong place. And I remember one of the lads who was playing in the session saying to me, "You've got that the wrong way around," as I was walking around the pitch doing something. And I was like, "Oh shit, yeah, I remember." And so I adjusted it. And so I remember that. I don't remember a first session with players, but I remember that moment in that small-sided game on my prelim fairly quite well. And I don't think after that I got a start position wrong, probably. Certainly in the course anyway. I've probably got lots of things wrong since, but he gave me a nudge. And it wasn't him that was in the wrong place, it was somebody else. But he went, you need to move him. So I moved him, and it made all the difference. So I couldn't tell you who it was. I can't remember who it was who told me that as we were, what his name was or anything. But I remember that moment, yeah, for sure.
At least we didn't have any session assassins during that bit of work.
it was tough, mate. I mean, it was a tough week. You know, and part of me, you think about coach education now, and I think coach education now is much, much better than it ever was. Far more user friendly. You know, the whole bit around in-situ support visits, going into people in clubs and seeing them with their players in a real environment, real setting. So we talk about environment again, where coaches feel comfortable and all that sort of stuff. You know, made great strides in terms of that. But I also think back to that, you know, going through that, you know, again, I also went through this sort of, I guess, more older school B license. So it was similar, that bit about being on edge, knowing you've got an assessment coming up. You know, those butterflies before you're about to go on, do you know what I mean? And all that stuff, I remember it. And for me, it had value, do you know what I mean? Because it, you know, it really kept me on my toes. It really, you know, I made sure I was ready. You know, and a part of me thinks there could still be a place for something like that, and almost that, you know, that assessment piece and how that then would fit with support visits in clubs and stuff. I don't know what it would look like, but for me, it was good. For me, that was an important part of the process. I think at the time I probably needed that. Do you know what I mean? Because it made me get my head down and do the work and really make sure I was ready. So when I did deliver that final session on whatever day it was, that I was in a place where I'd really done the work. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think there was value, for me. There was value in that kind of assessed process, I think.
I like that you mentioned there. It keeps you on your toes, and ultimately, I'm not going to say it filters out, but me personally speaking, we're seeing a lot of coaches now fly through badges and not mastering that content. So I think they're possibly that assessment. I mean, I remember my level 2 with the Army FA was similar. 40 students, I think something like 18 of us passed. Yeah, it was a real rigid system, and it did give you the nerves. It did give you to say, I've really got to get this detail in and think about what we coach. For sure, and I think there's probably a balance somewhere, and you know, you think about you almost think about that sort of coaching styles continuum, command versus trial and error. Yeah. You know, the game as a teacher type stuff that, you know, we kind of I went through a process that was certainly more at the command end of that scale as opposed to trying, you know, then we went through a process where we got a lot further towards the trial and error, let the game be the teacher type end. And now we're probably a bit more aware and actually float somewhere in between. And I had this conversation with our coaches on Tuesday night. You know, there's times when you've got to be at the command end. You might need to go there at some points, but there's also times when you need to be at the other end. It might, you know, even for one individual might need more of that, and another individual needs more of that. And, you know, you've got to be aware as a coach that you need to sort of float in between. So I think there's a balance, and the same with the kind of assessment versus, or the sort of summative versus formative type argument, I guess. There's probably a balance somewhere, and you maybe need to move somewhere along that continuum. I'm not sure what that balance looks like. I think the going into clubs is brilliant. I think that's, as a coach, I think that's a real positive part of coach education. You know, just because you know your players, you know why you're doing what you're doing. You know, when we were doing things like prelims and stuff, you know, you're working with 12 other people off the course. Do you know what I mean? In your small-sided game. You know, and you really had to pick, right, I need him to go as my right back because I know actually he can run about. Yeah. And on the last session on the day. So if I don't pick the right players, my session is just going to fall on his backside. Do you know what I mean? So you don't get that sort of stuff happening anymore. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's probably a balance. And I think in terms of the people going through courses and stuff, I think two things for me. One is the nature of the system sets people up to chase courses. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's changed recently. So until recently, you had to have A license to have any full-time job in a club. Yeah. So if you've got to have your A license and you want to work in a club, you're going to chase your A license. Yeah, I agree.
So the system almost forces that to happen. That's changed a little bit now with foundation phase leagues being able to be B license and stuff. So that, you know, the rules, you know, can dictate whether coaches chase quals, I think. And I also think the nature of some of the, you know, because coaching is now deemed a real job. And it's a profession. It's a teaching profession. It's no different to being a teacher. So it's a teaching profession. So people see it as a career opportunity. But you know as well as I do, to get into a full-time role that's paid fairly well, you've got to be at least B licensed, if not above. Yeah. So again, you're going to chase those qualifications, like you saw. I do level 1s, level 2s now, and candidates or learners are talking about, oh yeah, once I've done this, I need to get my B license, and you're like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
What you really need to do is you need to get out and you need to coach. You need to coach some players. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's that underpins it all. So I think about me. I think there was, so between level 2 or prelim and B license, there were 4 years, I think, something like that. And then between B license and A license, there were 12 years.
Right. Okay.
So a long time. Do you know what I mean? And that was very much a deliberate thing. So did I really at the time, did I need my A license? No, because of what I was doing. Would I have been ready to try and jump on at the time? Probably not. No, I needed to get out and do some work and work with work across a range of players, a range of levels, and get a real broad experience of what coaching is all about, and put myself in the best place possible to when I do go through it, to get through it. Yeah. So, but I think those that are driven, and I admire the fact that people are driven to want to go and get a job in it. I think it's brilliant, and I'm all for that. But I'm also all for the fact that you've got to do the bit in between. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I think about my role now. So I think about my job is to support coaches with CPD, coach development work. So typically, a lot of coaches see CPD as going on a course.
Yeah.
And for me, CPDs, or a very, very small part of it, is going on a course. There's actually a lot more to it than that. So I think my job then, come back to where I'm at now, my job now is about, yes, if they need a course, supporting with a course, if that's the case, but actually exposing them to what I would deem real coach development. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Really creating opportunities and taking opportunities and looking outside of the little bubble that we all sit in sometimes, and what's really going on. And we'll perhaps touch on that a bit more a little bit later in terms of sort of networking piece and getting out and finding out and creating and taking opportunities to go and see what's really happening out there, because that's where and then using some of that, because that's your learning for me. That's where your learning starts to happen. I think they talk about like something like 10% of your learning comes from a course.
Yeah.
The real learning happens when you go out and take the opportunity to gain experience, to use the stuff that you've picked up off a course. So
use it in context.
Yeah. So I think it's that thing about courses. We've all got to do courses because it's a must. And yes, you get lots of underpinning knowledge and understanding from going on courses, but the real learning is when you go and do it. And that's, I think about now, the stuff we've done over lockdown, which again we'll probably talk about, has been great, but they've not had a chance to use it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing for me. That's where I'm at now. I think that we've done all this stuff. So I think I put a little survey out to the coaches yesterday to get some reflections around what have been your takeaways. What's it reinforced for you, and what's it got you thinking about? And then off the back of that, what would you like more of? Do you know what I mean? So it will certainly help shape what we do moving forward. But I'm part of me thinks we've done the content bit, the 10%, but they've not had a chance to go and have the opportunity to get the experience trying some of the stuff out that we probably talked about. So I'll be interested to see what that looks like when we do eventually, get coaches and players back together on a pitch and actually get coaching. So that, I think it's, if that kind of answers that question, I suppose it's interesting.
It's interesting. It's something we do touch on later on in terms of there's been some fantastic content out there from a range of people and how we're going to take that and lead forward. But just moving on to sort of your career? You mentioned there Sparky, and then this prelim course sort of flipped your world upside down in terms of your career. A head coach role at the University of Birmingham came about. Was that through the work as a Sparky there as well?
No, it wasn't. No, it was networks, and it networks. So, you know, whatever had happened up until that point, and Jason Peter With's son, who was a coach educator and a coach, and was based over in the UK at the time. He lives overseas now. He was the head coach at the uni, and was leaving. So I think the uni asked him if they knew anybody. He rang me and said, "Would you fancy it?" I was like, "Yeah, why not?" It fitted at the time, and I'll be honest, it was class. Loved it. Loved the time at the uni. Brilliant. They'd been through a tough time, men's football at the uni. They got relegated from like the Bucks Premier, the National League. I think Jace was there 2 years. So the year before Jason went in, they got relegated. Jace had 2 years of it and couldn't get them back promoted. Decided to leave. One, because he was going abroad and other things. So it was just a great opportunity. It came at a good time, fitted with work. So I jumped at it, and it was brilliant. Honestly, the lads were class. We changed the program massively at the time, and I said to them, I'll give it 3 years, and you know, once I've done 3 years, if I haven't managed to get you up, you probably want to have a go at, because the aim was always to get promoted to the National League, because that's where the kudos is in books, and you know, it's important for a uni of the size of University of Birmingham to be competing with the Loughboroughs and the Baths and the Stirlings and all these sort of the bigger universities for sport. So we had a little go, and to be fair, I got on promoted the last season. The last third year we got promoted. Right. So having listen, we may have time for this conversation. So we used to train. We train in the morning. We trained at 7 in the morning. We trained 3 times a week, and then they played on a Wednesday afternoon in Bucks, and we were in the Midlands Division 1A or something. And in that division, it was us, Nottingham Trent, Loughborough Twos, Cov, and somebody else. There's only like 5 teams in the league, and us and Nottingham Trent were like always the two vying to get in the playoffs, to get into the top league. So their head coach was Alessandro Baccarini, who's now goalkeeping coach for the academy at Leeds. Me and Sandro got to know each other really well, and we still speak regularly. Great guy. So the first season we finished joint top, and I learned a really valuable lesson. They got into the playoffs on head-to-head, although we would have been top on goal difference. Right. So all along, as we were going through, I was like, like as long as we do this, as long as that, but we're going to go up, like we're going to get in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until the final game we were playing them. They beat us 3-1, I think. So I'm like, right, as long as we beat them, we're going to go up. And then I checked the rules, and we had to beat them by 3, because they beat us 3-1 to have a better head-to-head record than them. Yeah, and we beat them 1-0. So although we got the same 1-loss record, our goal difference was better. They beat us by 2. We only beat them by 1, so they got into the playoffs. Never forget it. Learn a valuable lesson about, like, if nothing else, make sure you know what the rules are for the competition you're playing in. So they got in the playoffs and they never got promoted. So there's like a playoff system. So the team that wins that league goes into a playoffs with the team that are bottom in the Premier League, okay, and the team from can't remember what league. Well, another. So there's a 3-team playoff. Right. They went into it. They lost, so they didn't get promoted. The following year, they won it again, and we came second. And they got into the playoffs, and they got promoted. So they went into the National League. So we're going to our final year, and it's really strange. You know, we ripped up the program. I had lads playing in the first team. We played in the third team the first year I started. Do you know what I mean? And so we had what I thought at the time was not going to be as good a team. As it turned out, we had come back to that environment bit. We probably technically didn't have such good players as that first season, but we just had a really, really solid group of lads. They were unbelievable. Anyway, we walked our division, got in the playoffs, and we had to play John Moores, and we had to play a Scottish university. Can't remember what it was. Anyway, this tells you what a tight group they were. So the uni hadn't got the funding to pay for us to travel up to Scotland the day before. So the lads funded it. So the lads clubbed together, funded it. They all travelled up, shared cars, got a hotel, stayed up the night before. We played in Scotland. We beat them comfortable, about 4. Came back and we had to play John Moores, who were the team that had finished near the bottom of the Premier Division. So they obviously played Nottingham Trent that season. So I rang Sandro, and he gave me the lowdown. This is their key player, blah, blah, blah. So we set up deliberately and whatever else, and we beat them 2-1. So we won both our playoffs games and got promoted, and I finished on that. So great group of boys. Great 3 seasons. Loved every minute of it. Some good players, by the way. Some, really good level non-league. A lot of them were playing good level non-league, Bromsgrove, Redditch, whatever at the time, and they'd still come and train 3 mornings a week. Do you know what I mean? And we had to train in the morning, partly for budget purposes, because the facility was free before 9 o'clock. So it fitted with the budget. And our budget, because we were in the top league, was smaller than, say, women's football who were in the top league. So we got less money off the uni. And fair play, I'd have 40 lads on a Monday morning at 7 o'clock.
Brilliant.
Unbelievable. Commitment, attitude. Just a great time. I did really well. I still speak to some of the lads now who are now. Obviously, they've left uni and they're away working and doing whatever they're doing. And, we have a regular little message and stuff. And, yeah, really good times. Really enjoyed it. It was never going to be a full-time thing and whatever else. And I felt I'd done my bit. And the lad who took over from me, he's still there, still doing it. And they're still in the Premier League. They're still in the top league. So they're doing okay. So it's all good. Yeah, but great times. Loved it.
A lasting legacy there then with the university side. And following on from that, you went over to Solihull Moors as a head of coaching.
So I flitted around a little bit. So I did a bit at Solihull through like the college programme and stuff, through Mark Fogarty, which was good. Really enjoyed it. Again, fitted with work. Spent a bit of time working with Darren Byfield, who was taking on the teams at the time. So that was good. I hadn't met him before, so we worked together and did a bit of work with their flooded team and stuff. That was cool. Didn't spend a long time there, but maybe a season, I think. There were lots of things, lots of changes going on with Solihull Moors now. Are a different beast to what they were at the time. There was lots of different things happening and whatever else. But again, just part of that experience, and it's part of that, getting out and working with players and working with different coaches, and it all adds to that experience. I think some of the things I did just after Solihull Moors probably had more value for me in terms of coaching experience, I think. But but it was great. And obviously working with Mark Fogarty again, he gave me my first full-time role in football post-college. So kind of went back and did a bit with him. And it was probably my first experience of a head of coaching. I don't think it was really a head of coaching like head of coaching is now. But it was kind of a first little taste of that kind of role, working with coaches a little bit in a club environment. But really valuable. Yeah, really, really good, really positive. And I mean, they've had a big girls' program linked to Birmingham City at the time. Mark Skinner was there, who's now gone to Orlando and stuff. So I worked with Mark, who I'd worked with previously at college and whatever else. So it exposed me to something a little bit different, which was good.
You mentioned there, obviously you flitted about a bit, but then the role at Walsall came up as head of coaching. How did you settle into that role, having gone from a coaching sort of background to developing coaches?
Yeah, it was really, it was different, I think, because If I'm brutally honest, the head of coaching things in clubs was fairly new.
Mm.
Some clubs had them, some clubs hadn't had them. They'd probably been around for maybe 12 months, I guess, in some clubs pre me going in. Before that, it was kind of academy managers generally did a bit of both. But on reflection, they didn't really do any head of coaching stuff because they wouldn't have the time to do it. So I'll be honest, I didn't quite know what I was going into in terms of what it might look like. Didn't really know what the coaches might have had before and what they would think it was going to look like. I don't really think the club and the academy manager knew exactly what it was going to look like, if they're brutally honest. And that probably was a good thing because I had a blank canvas to almost just run with it, and try some stuff and do some bits and just see where it went. So at the time, that was probably what I needed, I think, because it was a bit of trial and error, a bit of experimenting, a bit of getting to know the coaches and kind of work out the best way to do stuff that suited them and what they wanted and what they needed. And that also was a big win for me because there was no real KPIs as such. Do you know what I mean? So I could almost do anything, and nobody really knew any different. So it was fairly straightforward to get some stuff happening, and because not much had been happening beforehand, it was quite easy to make it look like I'd done quite a bit of good stuff. Do you know what I mean? So it was an easy win in that respect. So it worked out quite well. And listen, I had a great 2 years at Walsall. Really, really good 2 years. And I think we did some really good stuff and left it in a much better place than it was when I started. And there was very, very much a bit around. And it's probably, the way I work now is it's probably really impacted because it was all about getting to know the coaches.
Yeah.
It was all about getting to know what do they really want, what do they really need. And typically up until that point, all they ever did was a few hours of something CPD related to keep their 5 hours that was required by the licensed coach club to keep them up to date and tick boxes. There was never any what I would class as coach development going on. It was, we'll get the FAYCD in to deliver a workshop, or we'll send a few on a course, and job done. We've done our bit, and that's really what was happening. And I invested a lot of time in getting to know the coaches to really try and find out. So what, if you had the choice, what would you really like? Do you know what I mean? What would you really your development to look like? And that's been the same going into Shrewsbury because, up until, it's probably 9 months maybe now. A lot of that time has been spent trying to really get to know the coaches. What do you really want and what do you really need? Do you know what I mean? And if you really need to go on a course, then we'll get you on a course. But if you don't really need to go on a course, we'll do something else. Because actually that's what you really need. You might want to do your A license, but actually you really need to do, I don't know, A, B and C. So let's go and look at A, B and C. And once you've done A, B and C, that may well put you in a better place for an A license or whatever's next. You know what I mean? So the Walsall experience was really valuable because it gave me a real good understanding, I think, of what the role looked like. And the role looks different in lots of clubs it looks different. So at Walsall, the coaching program was done and was set. So, I had very little influence over the coaching program. It was all about the coaches. Whereas some heads of coaching have literally rewritten and they oversee the coaching program, the content and everything. Do you know what I mean? So it can look different in different clubs, but it was brilliant because it was a pretty much a blank canvas and I could just crack on. I was left to my own devices. I had to feed back into the kind of management team and the technical board what I was doing and what the impact was. And I think we did some really good stuff. And I think they're now in a much stronger position off the back of some of the stuff we did, for sure. So I think it was a real good grounding.
I mean, the way that you're currently doing at the minute, is backed up and supplemented by nearly 20 years of experience as an affiliate tutor with the FA. Just in obviously your own opinion, how has the role of the coach evolved during your time as a tutor? From when you when you first started out and you would say, I'm going to say the old school type of learning to now, how has the modern day coach evolved?
Listen, lots of ways, doesn't it? And it's ever evolving. And I think they're more, coaches are more knowledgeable now. They've got access to more content than ever before, which potentially can be part of the problem, because then you've got, you know, which bit you listen to and why and where and whatever else. So, you know, you can listen to content all the time, every day, but actually, which, you know, how do you filter out the bits that are relevant? Coaches have more understanding, I think, of where they think they're at and what they want. I think coaches have got to be teachers, not necessarily qualified teachers, but I think they've got to. We're just a teacher. I can remember tutors on courses saying to me back in the day that teaching and coaching were different. Okay. For me, teaching and coaching are absolutely the same thing. We do nothing any different to a teacher in a classroom. So I think coaches got to have outstanding knowledge of the game, of the technical aspects of the game, the tactical aspects of the game. You know, the game is changing tactically, although actually lots of stuff that's being done now is just coming round again, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You know, tactics evolve. You know, they don't necessarily change; they just come in and out of fashion. So I think they're more aware tactically than ever before. They're more aware of things like analysis, and they can use analysis more than ever before. I think the player you're dealing with is a different thing. They're more aware of what's going on. Their level of knowledge is different. They're physically different. They're bigger, they're quicker, they're stronger, they're faster, and they ain't going to get slower. They're going to get faster, and, you know, whatever else. So I think you're dealing with a different beast. So you've got to keep up to speed. And I think all that throws into the mix then as a coach development program. We've got to put stuff together that meets all those things, so it keeps them up to speed. It keeps their technical, tactical, physical knowledge up to speed. We're upskilling them around analysis. We're developing those teaching skills. We're getting them to think about where's the game going, what's the player looking like, how is it going to be different in 3, 4, 5 years' time. So I think that's our job as a coach developer, is to support exactly those changes that coaches are going through. But I also think they've changed in terms of, I think coaches have changed in terms of, I think about the role, these head of coaching jobs. So for me, there shouldn't even be a job, really. Coaches should do it themselves. Right. So coaches should take care of their own development, is how I see it. So if I think back, you know, whatever, 15, 20 years, I never had a head of coaching. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? I had to do it for myself. Yeah. I had to go and seek those opportunities. I had to think about what did I need, how did I need it, and how was I going to find those opportunities. And I drove my development. And I think a lot of coaches did that. I think some coaches still do it now. But I think because there's a head of coaching, there's almost that, he'll do it. Yeah. They'll do it. They'll get me on a course. They'll do this. They'll find that for me. Do you know what I mean? There's almost that. So, you know, almost part of me thinks that, you know, give it another 2 or 3 years. You would like to think that the coaches at Shrewsbury don't need me anymore, because you've got to a point where they are doing that for themselves. They're driving their own action plans. Do you know what I mean? At the minute, they're not. But hopefully they will be, do you know what I mean? Yeah. But then I would also like to think there'll come a point where they'll go, well, actually, we don't need him for that, that and that. But because of all these things that are now in place, we need him for this, this and this. Do you know what I mean? So there'll still be a role, but it might look different. So I think it's, you know, that's our job. How can we support them with developing that knowledge and understanding? Yeah. Because they need it. How do we help them develop that knowledge and understanding about being excellent teachers? Because they need it and they've got to do it. Mm-hmm. And then how do we help them think about where's it all going? What's it going to look like in 5 years' time? And therefore, how can we help them upskill themselves and provide opportunities to upskill themselves to be better? Because a coach, without a doubt, listen, a coach looks very different now to what it did, you know, back in the, you think about the amount of work that, you've worked in academies, the amount of work that goes on even before you walk on the grass.
Yeah.
The preparation time, the organisation, the level of detail in your planning. There may be the bits of analysis you've shared with players online or whatever before a session so they know what's coming. It's a different thing altogether. And you've now got grassroots coaches who are doing stuff like that. They're using VO, they're clipping, they're using longer match, whatever they're doing. Grassroots clubs are being, well, some are being exposed to that level of stuff.
Yeah. No.
So,
I mean,
very, very different beast. I think now coaches are very different now to what they were.
So with all that work that goes on as a head of coaching, what does the average working week look like for you, Rob?
It can vary. So there'll be weeks when. So we're for Cat 3 we have a lot of contact time. So we do our players get 3 sessions a week, where typically Cat 3s are doing 2 sessions a week, or the vast majority are. So we work across for the 16s down. We work across 3 sessions a week across the 4 nights, Tuesday through Friday. So Monday night we don't have anything on, and then obviously games on a Sunday. So there might be weeks when I'm out all 4 of those nights, watching coaches, working with coaches. I might only be out 1 or 2 nights a week. There might be weeks when, so if I know I'm going to be out 4 nights a week, as an example, I may not go into the club till a bit later in the day. There might be other weeks when I go in the day and I spend a bit more time out and around the under-18s in the day and the day release program, because I know I'm not going to be there till 9 o'clock at night. Yeah. So it will vary depending on who am I working with, what coaches am I working with, am I coaching myself? So am I taking a session or part of day release or part of the 18s or an age group on an evening or whatever it might be. So that will vary. Typically, Sunday mornings we'll be out watching the coaches at games. I might be taking a game with a coach, so if a coach isn't there or whatever else, I might go and work with the coach on an age group. I might just go and stand on the side of the pitch with an age group and listen and observe what the coaches are doing and give them a bit of feedback. So it will vary week to week. It might be filming coaches. So it might be, and again, nature of Cat 3s is if coaches are being filmed, it's typically me that does the filming, me that does the clipping, me that does the feedback. In Cat 1s, you've probably got someone doing that for you. It might be filming a coach on a match day. So it will vary week to week depending on what we're doing. It might be putting together a phase CPD event with the phase lead. It might be putting together an all-staff CPD event, which we will probably do maybe 3 times a season, 4 at the very most, where we get all the coaches in for a day and we deliver some content, whether that's guest speakers or internal stuff, whatever it might be. So it varies week to week, depending on which phase am I working with, which coach am I working with, what's their timetable looking like, and what's my own coaching responsibility, I guess. So, it can vary, mate, and I guess that's part of the attraction. It's not the same, it's different. And I come back to that, Dad saying to me years ago, don't ever, don't do something you don't like doing. Do you know what I mean? No week's the same. I love going into work. Do you know what I mean? It's never the same. It's always different. Keeps it fresh, keeps it interesting. And that's part of the attraction, probably.
It's quite strange that you mentioned that there, because the next question was, in your role as head of coaching, what is your drive to develop your staff? And I was going to allude to something that you mentioned earlier. Your dad hated work and it really influenced you to do something you enjoyed. So what's your drive then, Rob, to develop your staff? So
listen, the drive is all about two or three things, mate. One, from a club perspective, we need them to be as good as they can be and as effective as they can be. So, and if we do that, then potentially it's going to help the players get better. We might get more players through the system. So there's a club driver. There's an individual selfish driver around. I always think about things like authenticity, credibility. So I want them to think that I'm authentic and I've got credibility. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So selfishly, I want them to think that I'm good at what I do.
Okay.
So I'm going to make sure I put together stuff that has a value. So if and when I go, they'll go, he was good.
Yeah.
He gave us some really good support. He put some stuff in place that has helped us be better. So I guess there's a selfish driver from that perspective, because I want to be deemed as being credible and authentic. Do you know what I mean? And doing the right thing. I want to give them. I want them to want to get better.
Okay.
So I wanted to get better when I was, that part-time coach doing whatever. I wanted to be better. I want them to want to get better. And I think by, prodding and poking and developing that curiosity helps to make them want to get better. Listen, there'll always be one or two who won't. That's always going to be the case. That's never going to change. And they may not end up in the system. Do you know what I mean? Because eventually you'll find out who they are, and they may not fit for what you want at the time. So, but on the whole, you want them to want to be curious about stuff. So you want them to want to get better. So there's a driver around that. I guess there's a driver around, what's the word I'm looking for? So there's a driver around wanting to expose and give opportunity. I've been lucky. Look, I get lots of opportunities to be around good people and hear some really interesting stuff, and some real good personal development stuff. I think it's part of my role is to give others that same opportunity. Do you know what I mean? So, either through stuff I've done before, or also, through the head of coaching program that I do. I've been exposed to some really cool stuff and some really cool people who are really good at sharing.
Yeah.
And I want to do the same thing for our guys. And so there's a driver around that, creating opportunity for people. Do you know what I mean? Because it's difficult. I recognise it's difficult. We demand a lot of their time. They don't get paid ridiculously. So the other piece then around, if we're going to demand lots of them, they've got to be getting value for their money.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So they've got to go, you know what? Yeah, I'm not going to earn my fortune working at Shrewsbury, but actually it's worth it, because they're giving me loads. They're really helping me. They're really supporting me. They're giving me stuff I would never get elsewhere. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's a driver around that as well, that, we're not, they work really hard for what we pay them. So I think there's multiple drivers. Do you know what I mean?
It sort of leads me on to another question from my point of view is, you've gone in at Walsall where you mentioned there's a bit of a blank slate and you could go and do, get hold of it and really drive it forward. And then Shrewsbury, I mean, how do you get the buy-in from coaches when you're going into a role to further develop themselves? As you mentioned, there's some that just don't want to. Yeah,
I think there's, I think it all comes back. You've got to invest a bit of time getting to know people. Okay. So I think if you think about, and I use this with the coaches now, and I think you've seen it. We've got this, and I was exposed to it through something else. So it's now something that I use and share with the coaches. So the model is called the behavioural change staircase. Okay. And there's a if you really want to affect and have impact on people, there's a process you've got to go through. And you may have to move up and down that process at various times with various people, no different to working with players. So if I think about that process, it's about developing relationships. So time spent listening to people. So that kind of active listening bit would come as the first bit of this model that I talk about. The last bit is the behavioural change bit. And then along the way, there's things like, you've got to develop empathy, understand where are they at. So, we've got coaches who are, they've got real jobs in the day, they're working really hard. And I'm then going, I want you to do this, 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 and this. Well, if I don't have that relationship with them and understand where they're at, I ain't going to be able to get them to do those things. And either we'll lose the will because they're not doing what we want, or they'll lose the will because, you're asking too much, I'm going to leave. So you've got to invest time in getting to know people. The bigger challenge at Shrewsbury was around they'd had head of coaching before.
Yeah.
So some of the systems were kind of in place, although having gone in and done a bit of digging, they weren't really in place. So that they probably had an expectation of what head of coaching was going to be like because they'd had one.
Yeah.
So you've then got to again spend that time investing, building relationships. So they start to recognise, that you're authentic, you're credible. You've got that. So again, come back to that authentic, credible type stuff to help develop a bit of buy-in. I think the big buy-in then is about you've got to put stuff together that they go, you know what, this guy can really help me.
Yeah.
So once you've done it, you've invested that time in listening, understanding, getting to know where they're at. This bit around wants and needs. What do they really want? What do they really need?
Yeah.
And why do they really think they want and need those? Where are they at? You can then start to put stuff in place that will get buy-in because they go, well, actually, he's listened to what I said and he's doing some of the stuff that's really going to help me.
Yeah.
And I'm not just going in going, I'm doing this, and this. And I don't really care what you lot think.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So it for me, absolutely comes back to that. And if you want to somehow impact and have effect, change behaviour, if you don't do all that bit beforehand, get to know them, really understand where they're at, you've got no chance of doing that. And you've got no chance of buying.
I think that absolutely answers the question I did have next of how do you build trust in relationships with coaches without alienating or ostracizing them. But then what I would say from that is how much would you say that the development is coach-led and club-led? And also by offering the staff more, would you say there's been a greater buy-in?
Good question. So the first thing to probably think about is, so that I think about that model. I'm at different places with different coaches. Mm-hmm. So there's some where without a shadow of a doubt, we're getting some change. Absolutely 100%. There's others where the relationship is still building. Do you know what I mean? With that, so it's an ongoing thing. And I think that will always be the case no matter where you're at, you'll be at a different place with different people. We've also got our biases, haven't we? Some of us like certain people more than other certain people, and it's more of a challenge building that relationship with some people. So I think you have to invest more time. I think then, in terms of putting stuff together, I think we've got to a point where we've got some real good. I think they're really clear now about the difference between wants and needs. So initially there was lots of I want to go on my A license type stuff. When you actually do a bit of digging and spend a bit of time, well, actually that's great, but what you really need now is some of this, and this, and then maybe the A license is the next bit post that. But you've got to have that bit of time to get to that point. Me just going, you can't do your A license yet, is not, wouldn't work. And they'll just start to give you he doesn't want me to do this and he doesn't think I'm good enough or whatever it might be. So it's that time spent with the coaches, whether it be, over Zoom, whether it's a phone call, whether it's on the side of the pitch working with them, whether it's observing and, supporting them with kind of feedback, observations of what they're doing and that kind of thing. And that in itself can be a challenge, can't it? Because you'll give someone some feedback and they think you're having a go at them. And you're not. You just, here's what I saw. I'm just curious, And so we've now got a process in place which allows for that to happen. And it's user friendly, do you know what I mean? So as an example, I would go, if I might go and observe someone, we'll have a conversation. I might then give them a little bit of feedback afterwards. But then whether they want a further conversation off the back of that is up to them. Do you know what I mean? It's not forced on them. I don't make them do it. It's entirely up to them. And I think, like anywhere, initially it's quite club, and a lot of it has been driven by me at the minute. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I'm making sure having one-to-ones, having those conversations, I'm making that relationship stuff happen by having the conversations, making time, doing regular one-to-ones, whatever it might be. Some of it is club driven because we want them to be as good as they can be. Do you know what I mean? So we want them to coach a certain way. So we're at a point now where we're literally kind of just introducing our sort of how we coach model. It's fairly new. The first kind of time we kind of went through was at the start of lockdown as a Zoom chat. You know, so we want to coach like this, we want to coach like that. We need you to be better co-coaches than you are. Do you know what I mean? So we're literally now almost going, right, on session plans now, you've got to put on there, how are you going to work as a pair? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to demonstrate that you're thinking about it. And, you know, it was, you know, some of them were very good at it. Some of the age group pairs were excellent co-coaches. Others were maybe less effective co-coaches, and while one's leading, the other one's fetching the footballs. Well, for me, that's not enough. You know, we're not giving the kids enough if that's what we're doing. So you've both got to be at it all the way through. That doesn't mean you both got to be talking all the time and whatever else. But there's a clear, right, Martin and Rob, you're coaching together. Martin's leading. You're working around the main principle for the session. I don't know, progressive penetration. Rob, what are you doing? Well, actually, I'm gonna work to counter that. So I'm going to work with the other players against you. So I might have a bit more of an out of possession focus for that session. There might be another session where it's around progressive penetration. Rob's leading it. The co-coach, your role is to work with those 2 or 3 individuals within that. So then think about what coaching styles you're going to use, what interventions you're going to use with those 3 individuals. Do you know what I mean? And why? And when might? And that now is, when we do go back, that will need to be on their session plans. So again, we're demanding more of them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Don't just plan a session and tell us what your coaching points are. What are your principles? What's your main principle? What's your sub-principle? What's the lead coach doing? What's the other coach doing? Why are you doing that? Do you know what I mean? And that's club driven, without a shadow of a doubt, because we want you to do this. But we'll help you. So we'll put coach development activities on to help you understand what. So on Tuesday night, we went through exactly that. Here's what we think it should look like. Here's some of the things we'd like to be thinking about. Do you know what I mean? So it's not coming out of the blue, it's deliberate. Yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of it is driven by me, a lot of driven by the club. And without a doubt, some of the coaches are starting to drive it themselves. You know, so I'll get coaches all with me going, oh, I've been thinking about this. Do you think we could do this? Do you think we could do that? Do you think I could get access to some of this stuff? I'm like, yeah, cool. I'll facilitate it. I'll sort it. You crack on and do it. Do you know what I mean? So hopefully it's still probably more weighted towards me and the club driving it. But there's a bit more coach-driven stuff starting to occur. You know, ideally, it will start to swing the other way a little bit, probably. Do you know what I mean? And there'll be more coach-driven stuff.
You mentioned there, as a Cat 3 club, you've probably got more part-time coach staff than you have full-time. Would you say there's a fine line between exposing coaches to too much CPD and a risk of maybe overloading or intimidating those, and therefore, your part-time staff who may have a number of jobs and limited time on hands?
Without a shadow of a doubt. It's a real difficult balance. So we've made, over lockdown in particular, we've made everything optional. So if you can't come, you can't come. Do you know what I mean? We'll put plenty on. So I tied them up yesterday. I think we've done 21 things, coach development sessions over the last, 14 weeks, 13 weeks, whatever it is. And it's very much, and not every coach has done every single one. Do you know what I mean? There's been a couple where we've kind of gone, this one would be really good. If you can, try and make sure you're there. Do you know what I mean? So particularly the ones that are internally driven. So on Tuesday night, we went through how we play, how we coach moving forward. So really important club-driven stuff. So we sort of went, give it ideally you'll do that one. So if you have a choice this week, do that. If you then can't make next week's, that's cool. So it's been pretty optional on the whole. The positive is, I couldn't tell you the percentage. I would bet 80+% of staff have been on all of them.
Super.
So the buy-in's been really good. So I think, yeah, I think it's really difficult. You know, the nature of the nature of the part-time coach in the academy. You know, the demand has gone up and up and up and up in every club. You know, now it's, you know, in some of the bigger clubs, they get paid a lot more than they'll get paid for us. So you can kind of demand it. It's fair enough. You know, when you're still paying them what you've paid them for years. At smaller clubs, it's more difficult. So I just think you've got to develop that balance. And then you come back to that bit about understanding where are they at, having that relationship. You know, they need to be able to just come and go, look, Rob, I can't do that one.
Yeah.
Because I've got this, isn't it? And I'm like, that's cool, no problem.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And we use online platforms to share stuff. So if they miss stuff, it's recorded or the slides are put together, so they can still access stuff post the activity or the event or the workshop. So it's not like they don't get the information. It just means they may miss some of the conversations at the time that you have because they're not in the actual workshop or session. So, or they can't ask a question or whatever else to the person delivering because they're not there. So we try to make it as user friendly as we can. Do you know what I mean? Because exactly that. We've had guys certainly through lockdown who, you know, they've been working. You know, they're key workers and all that stuff. Do you know what I mean? Under lots of pressure, lots going on. So it's difficult. Do you know what I mean? So absolutely, you've got to make sure that it's friendly for them to use and they're not put under pressure to do stuff. But there's also got to be non-negotiables. There's got to be stuff where, you know what, we need you to do this. Mm. The job is this. Do you know what I mean? And we are really clear with all that, you know, all the coaches. Your job as a part-time coach is to do this. If you can't fulfill those things, it might not be the right job for you. Do you know what I mean? So there's got to be some non-negotiables. Yeah. And it can't be a free-for-all, but we try and make it as user-friendly as we can. And, you know, the club-driven stuff, if you ideally be there. If you can't, just let us know and we'll endeavour to make sure you get that information. And, you know, we'll cover that again at some point before we are back with players, you know, so you won't miss it completely. You know, but so, yeah, difficult one, but yeah, we've certainly over lockdown, it's been fairly optional.
I think with that, something that you alluded to earlier, how important is it then as a club and, you know, as head of coaching to have an environment where coaches are able to express themselves with maybe their own strengths that they bring to it, but also in line with the club's coaching program and philosophy? Yeah,
absolutely. They've got to be able to, you know, they've got to be, you can't be, what you don't want loads of robots, do you? You don't want loads of robots who all look the same and sound the same and say the same things and whatever else. But there's got to be a structure. Mm. So there's got to be this is the program. That's the content. This is the way we'd like you to work. So there's your framework. But within that, we've got to understand that Martin will deliver different to Rob. Mm-hmm. And do you know what I mean? And that's a good thing. Having different people in the room is good. You don't want lots of people all the same. So I think you need the framework, which we've got. It's got to be loose enough within that to allow coaches to show personality and whatever else. And I also think it's a challenge for coaches. And I think, you know, we talk about it on coach education courses and stuff a lot. Philosophy is kind of a cool word, isn't it? And philosophy gets bandied around a lot, you know. So we're going to play like this. So we want our teams to play like this, whatever that is. So we've got a couple of coaches who've come into the program who, probably given the choice, wouldn't play like that. Okay. And I'm like, well, actually, think about real life. If you want to go and get a job in the game, you may have a certain philosophy, but you've got to be flexible enough to bend and move a little bit, because where you're going to work may not have exactly the same philosophy as you. Yeah. And that's all right. Part of the skill of the coach is you've got to be able to adapt and adjust. And do you know what I mean? If you want some longevity in the game, you've got to be flexible to move with the times and change, because if you're too rigid, you'll kind of get left behind or you'll get stuck. And therefore you'll never go and work anywhere that doesn't align with what you're thinking. So I think there's a real balance in terms of that. So for example, we have some goal sessions that we want coaches to use. for certain aspects of the program. I think that really helps them. So it helps give them that structure. They will deliver it with their personality and the way they deliver, and that's cool. And they can adjust it and tweak it to suit the groups. They might change the distances. Do you know what I mean? They might, I don't know, they might change part of the organisation. But we've got, that's a really good practice for that part of our program.
Yeah.
And we think it works and we'd like you to use it. But you can deliver it. But that's only for certain, you know, we've got whatever, a dozen of them. You know, for others, we haven't got anything.
Yeah.
So it's free for the coach, you know. There's parts in our technical tactical program which are called Coach's Choice.
Right, okay.
So you do it. It's up to you.
That's good. So
do you know what I mean? So there's very much flexibility within that. So I think we've got a bit of both. You know, listen, is it right or is it wrong? It's what we think is going to work for us at the minute. Do you know what I mean? And that's where we're at. There's lots of clubs who are absolutely rigid and the coaches have very little choice. There are other clubs which are the opposite. They're completely, you know, there's a theme and then coaches get on with it, do what you want. And do you know what I mean? So we probably sit somewhere in between, I think. But I think it helps. You think about the coaches who are, you know, part-time, working all day and whatever. For them, a gold session is great.
Yeah. Because
they can get it off session planner, adjust some of the detail, change some of the names, etc., etc. They got their sessions done.
It's there, yeah.
So it's a real help for some as well, and some really like it. So it means we've got a bit of the best of both worlds, I think. But whatever they choose to do themselves, it's got to fit within our structure. It's got to align with how we play.
Yeah.
So if we're very much around look forward, play forward, aggressive in possession. So your possession, your in possession practices have got to have those elements to them. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the way we're trying to make our teams play, and our players play. So, I guess we're a somewhere semi-flexible model, I guess, somewhere in between.
Yeah.
But without a doubt, for me, we want the coaches to show their personality. You know, we don't want them all the same. We don't want them all delivering, you know, in the same manner and whatever else. And that's where you come to, you know, we still haven't quite nailed our coaching pairs for next season because we're spending loads of time thinking about, right, who fits with what age group and where, and how's that really going to look? Yeah. So we get the best out of everybody that we've got in the program. So it's a real sort of balancing act, I think.
I mean, with the level of learning that has been available, and I know we're off air and, you know, over lockdown about it, is that there's been a hell of a lot of fantastic content from many, many people.
Yeah.
Bit of a two-pronged question, really. How do you now see that amount of content being transferred into the game? And then do you feel that coaches have now become more receptive to sharing their work and open to networking?
So I think coaches were getting more open to sharing stuff anyway before this. You know, it's not like it was 15 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Where you couldn't go to a training ground and watch a session. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? If you contact someone and ask, can you go and watch something? I would imagine they'll say yes. Do you know what I mean? So I think just generally people were more open anyway. There's nothing to hide, nothing, you know. None of us are doing anything that different. Not really. Do you know what I mean? It's all variations on a theme in it. So I don't think, I think across the board, I think in football, I think across sports, the level of sharing has not just over lockdown beforehand was improving and increasing. I think lockdown has just magnified it. That's my general thoughts, I think, around that. I think we spoke before we started the recording. I think the real challenge is how does all this stuff impact what happens with players? And the answer to that is, you know, we won't know, will we, until we're back on the grass with players. There's been some tremendous stuff. There's been some rubbish as well, by the way. But there's been some tremendous stuff. The challenge for the coaches is how are they then going to interpret some of that and how will it impact on their practice? And they won't know that until August, September, or whenever they're back with players. So I think that's going to be the difficult one. So I think I said to you again before we started recording it, I've literally, because we're taking a little breather now from coach development and stuff for a couple of weeks, because we've done a lot. I've just put a little thing out to the coaches exactly around that, around here's all the things we've done as a club, here's all the things we've put together. Mm-hmm. What from all of that has reinforced stuff for you, and what's it got you thinking about? What has it made you curious about? And then what would you like a bit more of? So I've just put almost like a survey out to the coaches, going, "Come on, give me a bit of feedback. I'm curious," because again, that might, you come back to that bit about listening to the staff. Some of the stuff they come up with might shape what we do moving forward. Some of the things they think about, it's made them think about, might link to what I look for when I go and watch them when they are back coaching. Mm-hmm. So it will form part of their action planning process, if that makes sense. So, that'll be the challenge. What's the learning from it all? Mm. Don't know. I think that'll be an interesting question come 3 or 4 months down the line when people are back and have been back and started to actually potentially utilise and implement some stuff that it's got them thinking about. So that'll be a challenge for sure.
I mean, just you've touched on it there, and I know I've seen your activity on Twitter. Is there any sports that you have a real interest in that have transferables into football?
Yeah, I think they all have transferables into football. I'm curious. I'm really curious about American football. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking to a Buffalo Bills coach later on this afternoon about something that she might do for our staff. Really curious about American football. I'm curious about number of players, number of coaches. So how do you effectively co-coach when there's 30 of you? And how do you really affect the individuals when there's 70 players in your squad? Mm. I'm really curious about how they use analysis. And that's come about having a bit of time at home watching like Amazon and Netflix and stuff, watching American football stuff on the All or Nothing things. Like the way they use analysis. And this coach I'm talking to later, when I spoke to her the other week, she said, film is life for players. Okay. That they're into film all the time. So I'm curious, what could we get out of that? I didn't realise there's an NFL academy in London. Right. So once we're back alive, I'm going to, and allowed out, I'm going to go and visit the NFL academy and have a look and maybe do a little study visit for a couple of us, which I'm curious about. I'm curious about basketball. I'm curious about business. So I've got a guy doing some stuff in August for us who was a rugby player, so he's got a sports background, but he then started a business, changed his business, and then off the back of those changes, sold his business for millions and millions of pounds. And he's doing something around change leading to success. So I think about us as a club, we've gone through quite a period of change with a new academy manager, new head of coaching, new coaching program, blah, blah, blah. We want success, so he's going to deliver a little bit around that. So I'm curious about business. So there's lots of things it's kind of got me thinking about, not just from sport, but from the sort of other industries as well. But particularly American football and basketball are on my agenda at the minute. And I think it's about stepping out. You've got to get outside your bubble a little bit. I think we all get caught on that kind of I was speaking to Russ Earnshaw the other week about, you get caught on that hamster wheel, don't you? Mm. And 1 week becomes another week, 1 month becomes another month. Before you know it's the end of the season, and what have we done? And you're just on that never ending. And sometimes we've got to get off. And we've had to get off because of the lockdown and stuff. So we've had to all get off that wheel right now, which has given us a great opportunity to think about other stuff. For me, the important piece will be about when we do go back and we have to jump on the hamster wheel, because we will have to jump back on, recognising the value in getting off. Right. And taking the chance to get off that wheel and maybe get outside of the norm, what we're normally doing, because I think there's value in doing that. And part of my job is to help coaches to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very conscious that I've taken up a lot of your morning.
I'm all right, mate. Plenty of time.
Before we head into our infamous quick fire question round. Part-time coaches, you know, you've been through a journey yourself to get where you are. Can it be easy as coaches looking for that career in the game? We mentioned it of skimming these badges just to get that opportunity to maybe spread ourselves too thinly and maybe do more with less quality rather than do less with more quality. And what advice would you give to those coaches looking for that journey?
It's really easy to spread yourself too thinly and try and do everything. And I don't think you can. I think you've got to be really realistic with what you can do. Because I just think you burn yourself out because you're doing too much. And I think there's real challenges around for part-time coaches around that. And I also think we've got to be, coaches need to be really thinking about what do you really want and why do you really want it and where do you really want to go. So people are like, oh, I want to work in an academy and this, that and the other. You know, working in academies, you know, has lots of plus points, don't get me wrong, but it's really hard work, and really demanding on your time. So if you're going to go and do that, be aware of that when you go into it. And if you don't really know that, try and go and have a look at academies and try and get in about it and try and speak to people who are around academies because they'll tell you what it's really like. Mm-hmm. And then you can make a real clear judgment. That's really what I want to do. Or actually, it's not what I want to do. It's not for me right now. It doesn't fit with where I'm at. We all need a life outside of what we do. Do you know what I mean? And the pressures that can bring. So I think it's really important to not spread yourself too thin because it's really easy to do that. And you just lose quality, don't you? Yeah. At some point, something gives. So, you know, you'll be out every night of the week, every Saturday, every Sunday. Eventually, something will give. The quality of what you do will go. Yeah. It's only that's normal. And it doesn't matter whether you're coaching football or I don't know, painting houses. At some point, something will go. So, I think that's really important for coaches to be aware of. And I think it's to, you know, think about the why. So why do you want to do what you want to do? And what's your driver? And if it's really your why, what are you then going to do to get there? And how are you going to... So like we were talking about coaching, what, why, how, where, when and who. All that stuff in it. Who can help me? If I really want that, why do I want it? Who can help me? How can I access that help? Etc. etc. And because, like we said before, people are more open than ever. You know, if you contact someone, you know, Twitter's a great tool. Twitter's like a load of nonsense, but actually it's a great tool. If you message someone, they'll probably message you back. Yeah, the vast majority of people anyway, and they'll generally try and help you if they think they can and they've got the time and inclination to do that. So, you know, if it's a course, if it's a job, whatever, why, and then what are all the bits you've got to do to get yourself to that point. And don't be in a rush because you've got to do the work. But I understand that sometimes people are in a rush because they're really driven, and I really admire that thing about being driven and wanting something that much. So then it's about just picking and choosing who do you speak to, where do you go, how do you do it, where are you getting the most value. You know, if I'm coaching in 4 environments, which 3 are the most value, and I'll just do those 3. Yeah. Because actually they're the bits that are really going to help me. That other one was kind of nice and it earned me a tenner, but actually probably wasn't worth it. Yeah. And then just being real clear on stuff like that, I think. And it's difficult. It's really, really difficult for coaches, I think, to get that balance. And we've all done it. Do you know what I mean? We've all spread ourselves too thin. We've all done too much. And eventually we've fell off the other end because it's been too much. You know, it's easy for me to sit there saying that now, do you know what I mean? But it's I think it's absolutely true. So yeah, for sure. Be really picky about what you do and why.
Brilliant. Rob, I could speak to you for hours, and I know there's about five to 10 questions I have left out, which could make for another podcast. But we do like to finish off with a quick fire question round to put you on the spot a little bit and get to know a little bit more about you. First question is, what do you prefer, developing coaches or developing players?
Okay. I'm not going to sit on the fence, but I kind of am. So I like both.
Okay.
And I've done both. If I had to choose one, I would probably say developing coaches. Only if I had to choose.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think it suits my skill set and stuff like that. So I think it really suits. That's not to say I wouldn't want to go and develop players, because I do. Do you know what I mean? And I think by developing really good coaches, in turn, that is going to develop really good players.
Yeah. No, good answer. Best moment in football to date?
I'll give you two. So the University of Birmingham promotion year, unbelievable. And we've not talked about it. So I spent, before going into Hales Owen as 18s coach, I did the 18s and then the first team at Stourbridge.
Okay.
And the year I was there, we got second round of the FA Cup. And we weren't the live game, but we were on match of the day. We lost to Eastleigh, who were in the conference at the time, having already beat Dover at the conference and Kidderminster and whatever else. So second round of the FA Cup at Stourbridge.
Wow, brilliant.
Yeah, it was class.
Best friend in football?
Oh. So my best friend in football, I'm gonna claim two, because I can't probably split them. So a lad called Darren Reed. So I didn't know Daz as a kid. We didn't grow up. Neither of them was school friends. When I was at Wolves, I gave Daz a job at Wolves through a funded program we were running. We got really pally. We've been great mates ever since. He now works in the Thai Premier League he runs an academy now in the Thai Premier League, having coached in the Thai Premier League, and he coached in UAE and other. He's been abroad for a number of years. So I speak to Daz every couple of weeks still, even though he's overseas. Great lad. Love him to bits. Another lad called Gary Jeffrey. So I worked with Gary through England College's women's programme. Again, didn't meet him till starting that. I couldn't tell you what year it was. And again, we've grown to be great mates. I'm now godfather to his daughter and all that sort of stuff. So in football, those would be, well, not just in football, probably just generally, those would be two of my best pals. And they both are in football as well as outside of.
Superb. Toughest opponent as a coach?
I'm going to go Alessandro Baccarini when he was at University of Nottingham Trent, and I was at University of Birmingham, and we had those three. Certainly, those couple of seasons where we were at it between the pair of us, and he had it over me both those seasons, to be fair. But then helped me out in the last year when we got to the playoffs and gave me a bit of inside info. So again, we don't speak as often as we probably could and should. But yeah, we had some good games and some good times. We both had good teams, and we got to know each other fairly well through that time.
Biggest role model or influence in football?
Tough, that, you know. Really tough. So the first one's not football. So Dad telling me never to do a job you don't like. Without a doubt, best piece of advice I've ever had. And he knows. Until recently, I've never told him that, but he knows now. So yeah, without a doubt, that has affected probably what I do, but not from football. And then there's probably a few. So prelim, Tom Stack and Colin Morris. So Colin's no longer with us. Tom still about, still delivers safeguarding courses for county FA and stuff. Delivered that prelim. I still speak to Tom and see Tom and whatever else. clearly had an influence in some way, shape or form because it's affected what I do now. Derek Mann. So Derek Mann I worked with at Wolves when we worked in the community programme. He'd got a real background in the game. He'd worked at Huddersfield, Watford, first team level. And without knowing it, probably was my first mentor. So I went through my B licence at the time, and we had regular conversations in our little office at the Molyneux and on the whiteboard and talking about sessions and stuff. Again, sadly, no longer with us. Derek, great guy. Top guy. Those would be real obvious ones that I can think of. But I've been lucky to be around some real good people just across the board who, in some way, shape, or form, will have had an impact along the way. And with a bit more thought, I could probably name a few others, but those are the obvious ones that come to mind.
Okay. This has probably been the most difficult question for people to answer. Describe yourself in 3 words.
Oh, mate, that's difficult. Hard-working. Although that's 2 words, I'll claim it as one. Hard-working. Humble. And what I mean by that is I'm quite happy to not take the credit for stuff. And I'm a doer.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is I'll get stuff done. Do you know what I mean? Whatever it is. So if I want stuff doing, I think to my detriment sometimes, I'll just get stuff done. Yeah, they might be 3 words. I could think of others. I'm sure other people could think of others maybe as well. But they might be 3 that come to mind.
Fantastic. The final question for me is there anyone you would recommend or like to hear on the podcast?
So listen, if you pull this off, this will be unbelievable, right? Somewhat easily doable. So I think you should get Russ Earnshaw on.
Okay.
So I mean, he does his own through Magic Academy and stuff like that. Russ Earnshaw is class. I would do the girl I'm speaking to this afternoon who works at Buffalo Bills, Phoebe Schechter. Again, I can put you in contact, or she's on Twitter and stuff. Fascinating story. Female working in NFL and whatever else. Fascinating. Real. I've had 2 or 3 good conversations with. I think she'd be interesting. Who else? There's a guy called Richard Heitner, who is not from football. He worked at Saatchi and Saatchi. He's done stuff on our EHOP program. Talks about leading from the shadows. So, there's there's A leaders and B leaders, and he thinks he's a B leader, and how that looks and what that looks like. Really interesting guy. He'd be good. I think it'd be interesting to get maybe like one of the FA staff on, maybe like a coach developer or something like that would be interesting, or one of the position specific coaches, something like that would be good for people to listen to, and completely off the wall and out there. If you could pull off a thing like, I'm going Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, who both coach in the NBA, obviously, and the chances of that are probably very, very small. However, I've heard a couple of things they've done over the lockdown, and really, really fascinating stuff. Obviously, coach NBA and whatever else, but and I've won a few NBA titles and all that stuff. But I know Russ Earnshaw's after Steve Kerr, trying to get Steve Kerr on his podcast. May not be doable, but there's loads of others, mate. And listen, for me, anyone who's coached and he's coaching and has got a story to share and tell, I think he's all good. And I think will have value for people who want to listen to stuff because it's all relevant. There's loads, mate. I could give you more, but those would be good ones. I think things like that.
I'll certainly chase a few of them, and as we said, if we'll just drop that message on Twitter, and hopefully the vast majority reply.
Do it, mate. That's the way it works. Twitter's a great tool, I think. Like we said before, it can be absolute garbage on there, obviously, and whatever else. But for a networking tool, unbelievable.
Superb.
Yeah, it is really good. So, I use it a lot for that. So, yeah, really good. And I'm sure most will reply.
Yeah. No, fantastic. I'll get onto that. And look, again, I just want to say thank you, Rob, because for you to take the time, I know you're busy developing the coaches and staff at Shrewsbury. And also just the support you've shown me in my career to date through the mentoring scheme, and the chats we have where I'll ring you up and have a little bit of a whinge and a moan for a bit. I really want to thank you for that, mate.
Pleasure, mate.
I hope you enjoy your bike ride in a minute, mate. And I just want to wish you and Shrewsbury all the success moving forward, bud. And no doubt we'll catch up soon.
Top man. Thank you, pal.
Cheers, Rob. Speak soon, mate.
All the best.
Thank you.
Ductig brand is on hand for all of your coaching needs. Whether it be to plan sessions or take notes whilst observing games, Ductig are able to cover all of your needs. Use the discount code Irvine20 at checkout to receive a discount. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoy the content that we're trying to bring to you. Don't forget, new episodes will be released every Monday. You can find us on the iTunes Store, Spotify, and if you want to see the video, you can see it on our YouTube channel, PCT Football Coaching.